Her true story, from Texas. They left me with the dog while they vacationed in Hawaii, so I called a pet sitter and flew first class. Their faces when they saw me at the resort? Priceless. They booked paradise. I booked the suite next door. "Mom, you don't need to come," my daughter spat, her voice sharp as Texas sunshine. "Just look after the dog and tidy up the place." Her laughter rustled like tumbleweeds across the room. My son flicked his nail as though sweeping dust from a counter. "Yeah, your absence is more useful than your presence right now," he added, his tone cold and dismissive. The air felt thick, like the 90-degree heat pressing against the window panes. I stood in the center of the living room, gripping my cardigan as if it could anchor me. The cicadas outside were louder than my family's silence. This house, once a sanctuary of Sunday dinners and birthday candles, now echoed like a stranger's shell. My chest tightened. They saw me as a burden, unspoken but clear. But under the hurt, something stirred. I straightened. "I have been your mother," I said, voice shaky but rising. Years of care collapsed in that moment, unrecognized. My son looked away. My daughter smirked. But I had already begun the quietest revolution, reclaiming my worth. I felt my spine lengthen. If this was the conversation they wanted, I would give them the last line. "I understand," I said, pausing while they let the words settle like stones in the dust. "I understand. You don't want me here. You think my presence is a burden." I didn't ask if they were sure. I knew the answer. All right then. I walked past them, past their smug faces as the afternoon light glinted through the lace curtains. I stepped into the kitchen and poured a glass of water, icy cold against my palms. A shock that reminded me I was still alive. When I returned to the living room, I left the glass on the coffee table between their dusty clothes and an old remote. "The dog doesn't need me either," I said softly, voice quiet but firm. "He has someone to stay with him while I'm gone." They blinked. They said nothing. I took a slow breath. The anger had not left, but now it fueled something stronger. Resolve. I would not go without purpose. I would leave of my own design. I turned to them, suitcases resting by the staircase. "I'm leaving," I said. "I will stay somewhere nice, somewhere I'm welcome. You will be fine without me." I felt my heart pounding with determination, my words measured like diplomatic notes. My daughter's lip curled. "Go ahead," she said. "I'll show you the way to the car." Her tone dripped with contempt. I walked past her, collected my suitcase, and picked up the leash beside the door. My hands closed over it, not to take the dog out for a walk, but to remind myself I was not afraid. I would go. I would stand alone, or better yet, stand beside those who saw me as more than a chore. The front door closed behind me with a deliberate click. The heat of Texas wafted around me as I stepped onto the porch. I paused for a moment, breathing deeply. The cicadas were still buzzing. The porch swing hung empty, creaking softly. I stepped down the porch steps, the wooden planks rough under my feet. I felt tears prick at my eyes, not of sadness, but of release. I had given years of myself freely, silently. I had done my duty. Now, perhaps, it was time for something different. I walked to the car parked in the driveway, its paint faded from years of sun exposure. I unlocked the door, slid inside, and closed my eyes for a moment. I replayed the voices from inside, the dismissal, the laughter, as though it meant something more before. Now they were merely words left behind in the dust. I started the engine. The radio came alive with soft country music that felt warm and kind. I eased the car into gear and drove away. Each mile took me farther from the house that once felt like a sanctuary. With every mile, I felt lighter, steadier. The echo of their disdain no longer bound me. A quiet pride began to bloom. I decided then that I would not go quietly. I would not hide. I would hold my head high, and eventually I would let them see that life lived with grace and dignity could strike them silent. If they thought I would fade into the background, they had underestimated me. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel. I had no itinerary, only purpose. I would not let their words define me. This was my moment, not theirs. And I planned to make it unmistakable, without malice, without apology, but with undeniable presence. As I pulled away, the house shrank behind me, but I did not look back. The storms inside had broken. The horizon ahead felt vast, uncharted, and full of possibility. I pressed my foot on the gas and let the road carry me forward. When the door clicked shut behind me, I did not sink into sadness. Instead, I reached for my phone with steady hands and dialed the local pet sitting service. My voice was calm but firm. "Hello, I need someone to care for 2 golden retrievers and my house while I'm away. Dates are next week through Monday. Please keep it confidential. No need to text or call me during that time unless it's an emergency." The woman on the other end responded briskly with availability, and I confirmed the reservation. I felt a small sense of triumph. I had arranged for my dogs to be cared for, my loyal companions, without involving them, without inviting interference. Once I hung up, I moved to my laptop and opened my frequent flyer account. I searched flights to Maui, insisting on first-class tickets. I tabulated the dates to match their Hawaii vacation. I imagined the soft recline of the seat, the green tea-scented lounge in the terminal, the polite flight attendant greeting me by name. I clicked through options until I found a flight that aligned perfectly. My heart fluttered at the thought. I clicked Book Now, confirmed billing, and watched the boarding passes email to me seconds later. I brushed away a nervous tear, telling myself, "You are worth this." I downloaded the confirmation to a folder titled Maui. Next came the resort reservation. I searched Maui Beachfront Suite on the villa's website, and there it was. An ocean view suite with a lanai, steps from the pool. I held back at the price. It was more than I usually spent. I checked my savings. Yes, I could afford it, just enough. I clicked Reserve, filling in my information, selecting Leave keys with front desk, wanting no signature of cooperation, no lines of communication with them. The confirmation landed in my inbox. I stared at it, the words "Suite confirmed" glowing across the screen. My pulse raced. I was stepping into new territory. I closed my laptop and sat in silence. A breeze drifted through the open window, stirring the curtains. I pictured waking up to the sound of waves, the scent of plumeria drifting through the suite. Waves, not their voices. I moved into the dining room and set out a small pile of clothes for the trip. A linen dress, sandals, a cardigan for the plane. I tucked in a good novel, a silk scarf, my favorite reading glasses, some special lotions I'd kept for days like this. I chose jewelry, a pearl necklace my late husband gave me to wear on the flight, for no reason except it made me smile. I paused where the keys hung on the entryway rack. I left them, turning instead to the pet sitter's copy of the house key I had just received. I snapped a photo of it with my phone and deleted the picture, so all I had was presence, not proof. Enough to open the door in their minds. I was coming back, stronger, dignified, but not here to meet their terms. That night, I sat on the porch swing with my dogs at my feet, dogs blissfully unaware they were about to vacation without their mother. I stroked their golden heads and whispered, "You'll be spoiled while I'm gone. Then we'll take an adventure together someday." I felt exhilaration blooming in my chest. Sleep came fitfully. I dreamt of tropical flowers and palm leaves brushing my skin. My alarm sounded at dawn. Without hesitation, I tucked my phone and passport into my purse and left the house, locking the door quietly behind me. I kept glancing back, not out of fear, but to steady my resolve. I had arranged everything in secret. They would not know until I was landing. At the airport, I breezed through check-in and security, seated in the lounge sipping green tea. A man behind the counter smiled as he slid my boarding pass across. "Enjoy Maui, Mrs. Harris." My heart swelled. For once, someone saw me as more than just a caretaker or a burden. I existed as a woman with agency, with desires. On the plane, I reclined fully, closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, allowed myself to breathe out all their voices. I pulled out my book, opened to chapter 1, and read a page. I felt tears, but they were not sad. They were signs of freedom. The flight descended, and I watched as Maui unfolded beneath the clouds, a quilt of green mountains and blue sea. The plane door opened, heat and sunshine streamed in. I stepped onto the runway, suitcase wheeling beside me, and inhaled deeply. I was doing this for me. I walked into the airport lobby and felt an unexpected flutter in my chest. Gone were the anxiety and resentment I'd carried at home. In their place was something lighter, anticipation. I had checked in online, but the moment I approached the first-class desk, the attendant greeted me with a sincere smile and handed me a priority boarding pass. "Mrs. Harris, welcome," she said, scanning my passport with genuine warmth. It was as though she saw me, not the obligation to stay. I was escorted to the VIP lounge, where I sank into a plush armchair and was offered a flute of sparkling water and warm towels. Around me, travelers conversed quietly or typed away on laptops. I watched people smile at me, not with pity, but as if I belonged. The soft hum of the lounge, the scent of almonds and coffee, the gentle clinking of glass. It felt like stepping into a sanctuary I had earned. Announcements sounded. First-class passengers boarding Southwest Flight 32, Maui. My heart hummed. I gathered my belongings and walked with purpose toward the departure gate. Once inside the cabin, I eased into my seat and exhaled. The leather reclined fully, memory foam cradled me. A friendly flight attendant appeared and offered a choice of champagne or juice. I raised a glass to myself before the plane even taxied. As we took off, the city light shrank behind us. The safety demonstration faded into the background as I sipped my bubbly and gazed through the window. I was leaving behind 90-degree Texas bitterness and stepping into warmth that felt like permission. The in-flight dining service arrived quietly, a light spring salad, grilled fish with roasted vegetables, and a lemon tart for dessert. Each bite was fresh, soothing. Nobody handed me a chore list or asked me to tidy up. Instead, they catered to my comfort, to my needs. The cabin lights dimmed. I reached for my book, a novel I had started months ago but never gotten past chapter 3. Now I read with ease, savoring the words without guilt. I closed my eyes briefly and thought, I am not an inconvenience. I am entitled to this. Sleep came later, gently. I unbuckled the belt, stretched my legs, and felt the fullness of a first-class seat fold beneath me. I drifted into a light nap, thinking of palm trees and sandy shores. When I awoke, the sun was higher, the skies clearing. I pressed the call button and a small tray appeared with fresh fruit and coffee. I looked out the window at the Pacific below. Its vast expanse mirrored the freedom I felt in my chest. Throughout the journey, I caught tiny affirmations. A toddler asked his mother in hushed tones, "Who is that nice lady in first class?" A flight attendant passed me a small note. "Enjoy your vacation, Mrs. Harris." I wanted to cry, not from sorrow, but from relief. I was being seen as a person, as someone who deserved dignity and self-care. We began our descent into Maui. The island appeared beneath us, emerald green against sapphire water, dotted with coral sand beaches. I pressed my forehead to the glass and whispered, "Yes." The anticipation swelled. Soon I'd stand barefoot on soil warmed not only by the sun, but by my own worth. When we landed, I gathered my bag and followed the others into the arrivals lounge. My sandals brushed the smooth tile, and I took a steady breath. The Hawaiian sun poured through the open doors, welcome and forgiving. I felt my shoulders drop, my mind release its grip on resentment. A resort shuttle awaited. I settled into its seat and watched the drivers navigate palm-covered roads towards luxury. As the vehicle turned into the resort's driveway, a fountain sprayed in soft arcs and a lei was draped around my neck by a smiling staff member. I stood taller as she said, "Welcome home, Mrs. Harris." I stepped inside the grand lobby, high ceilings, ocean breeze, hushed piano. No one here cared that I had once been dismissed. Here, they treated me as a guest, a person worthy of their utmost care. My suite lay just across the hall from my daughter's reservation, but I refused to think of them for now. This was my arrival. In my room, a welcome basket of fruit and flowers waited. I set them on a glass table, inhaled their sweetness, and unzipped my suitcase. I changed into a crisp sundress, feeling the fabric brush fresh against my skin. I walked slowly to the lanai, overlooking the pool and the sea beyond. The surf crashed in distant rhythm. It felt like applause. I sank into a chaise lounge, the breeze lifting my hair. I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, "I'm worth this. I've earned this." The words felt foreign, yet right. I reached for my phone and texted my son, "Made it. I'm relaxing." I didn't add anything more, no need for justification. As I stretched out in the sun, I noticed something miraculous. I was calm. Not numb, not stressed. Peace had returned in gentle waves. I had resisted being mediated by their terms. Instead, I chose to stand by my worth. Here, in Maui, I reclaimed my dignity, and I would let them see that, without so much as a wave. I pushed through the double doors of the Maui resort and was immediately embraced by sunlight filtering through towering palms. Golden light danced on the tiled floor, warming my skin even before I felt the tropical breeze. The scent of frangipani and hibiscus drifted around me, as if the entire resort was smiling in welcome. I walked slowly, savoring each step, the soft echo of my sandals on the marble, the gentle hush of unfamiliar voices mingling with the distant rush of surf. A resort attendant approached me, eyes kind and professional. She spoke my name as though it mattered. "Mrs. Harris, welcome back." And a folded custom itinerary was placed in my hand. I nodded, tongue loosening, responding with a soft mahalo. I didn't hesitate as she led me to the elevator, sliding her hand gracefully across the polished panel until the dial chimed. When the doors opened on my floor, a bellman stepped forward and wheeled my suitcase with care, as though I were a guest of honor, and, for once, I was. The hallway to my suite smelled faintly of coconut and ocean breeze, and the patterned rugs felt soft underfoot. Small details caught my eye. Orchid garlands floating in glass bowls, artful carvings of sea turtles inlaid on the doors, the happy laugh of children drifting from the common area. As I approached the suite door, my heart fluttered, a mix of emotions I had left behind in Texas: doubt, fear, erasure. Here in Maui, those things were evaporating in the heat, replaced by something infinitely more powerful: belonging. The bellman stepped aside as I inserted the key card. The door clicked open, and I stood for a moment on the threshold, breath catching as the full scene revealed itself. The suite unfolded like a painting bathed in light: wide-planked teak floors, a living area with creamy sofas, and beyond that a glass wall opening onto a lanai with unobstructed views of the turquoise ocean. The scent here was different too: brine mixed with sandalwood, warm linens with a hint of paradise. A small pillow awaited on the chaise, embroidered with my initials in gold thread. A chilled bottle of sparkling water lay in a tray with 2 glasses. I closed the door behind me and let the moment breathe. No one waiting with criticism, no chores assigned, no demands. Just me, the space, the horizon beckoning. I set down my suitcase and padded barefoot across the floor. The gentle crash of waves grew louder, more intimate, as I stepped onto the lanai. A family swam in the infinity pool below, laughter drifting upward like joyful ribbons. The pool's edge blended seamlessly with the sea beyond, as though they shared the same endless horizon. I inhaled deeply and felt my sternum release in gratitude. A resort attendant passed and called my name. "Mrs. Harris, cocktails on your way down to the lounge," and I realized they remembered me. My pulse ticked warmly. She noted the room number closest to the family suite, just across from them, exactly where I had reserved. We smiled politely, and I nodded. "Yes, please." I sipped the cool water and let my gaze drift. There, across the pool, on the resort's soft lawn, were the silhouettes of my daughter and son. They lounged on chairs arranged like 2 exhausted vacationers, not expecting to see me. A moment unfurled slowly. My daughter straightened and looked over. Her mouth froze mid-word. My son sat up, grips tightening around the towel beneath him. The cogs of confusion turned behind their eyes. Now came the moment I had earned. I closed my eyes and tilted my face into the sun's warmth. My spine lengthened comfortably. I carried no resentment, only resolve. Others might mistake my ease for pride. I didn't mind. I walked back inside and found the cheese with their name on the back, a tasteful welcome placard. I sat down and ran a hand over the embroidery. A server appeared, offering a menu for light evening beverages. I ordered a Mai Tai, the sugar and rum and citrus mingling perfectly. The glass arrived, complete with orchid garnish and sweet condensation. Glass in hand, I stepped back onto the lanai. The breeze picked up, gentle, reassuring. I raised the glass subtly, just high enough for them to see. They looked. Their faces, first confusion, then a flush of surprise, then the distinct sheen of embarrassment, filled the distance between us. I smiled. No wide grin, just a soft corner of lips. It was a greeting, a reminder, and a message all in one. I am here. I belong. They lowered their eyes. My daughter wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, as though she might have to confess something. My son stood, moving slightly closer, but the distance between suites was their choice to cross, not mine. The sun dipped golden behind the palms, bathing everything in soft light. I leaned back, watching the waves at the horizon with calm determination. I didn't need applause. This moment was for me, an affirmation of worth shaped through service and sacrifice, tempered by neglect and condescension. Inside the lounge, patrons paused mid-sip to look at us. I relaxed even more, settling deeper into the chaise. The world was large, and I was exactly where I belonged. A few minutes later, my daughter and son rose together and began walking toward me. I didn't look at them again until climbing the lanai steps. When I did, their expressions mirrored mine from earlier. They were not the center of this story anymore. My daughter swallowed. "Mom, we, weren't expecting you here." I nodded, glass steady in my hand. "I thought you should meet me here." Her eyes glistened. I tapped my lips gently with the glass. "I'm glad you did." My son appeared at her side, exhaling. "I'm happy you're here. I raised a finger, politely pausing him. "I deserve this. A chance to be seen as more than a caretaker." I set the glass down on a low table. "We can enjoy dinner later if you like, if I'm welcome." They nodded. No words came, but their presence, halting, sincere, said enough. Later, as I stepped inside my suite, I took a final look back over my shoulder at their retreating figures. The sun had slipped beneath the horizon, leaving sky blushing in lavender and peach. I walked back into the suite, closing the door softly. I set my Mai Tai on the counter and exhaled, a long, steady breath. In that radiant stillness, I affirmed. I had taken my place, no permission asked, no apology offered, just belonging earned. And this was just the beginning. I had just settled onto the poolside chaise with my Mai Tai in hand when I spotted them. My daughter and her husband, caught between the umbrella-dappled shade and the shimmering blue of the pool, were reclining in lounge chairs, towels draped across their shoulders. The afternoon sun warmed their backs, a lazy glow that spoke of indulgence. I raised my glass and let my eyes track their direction, curiosity steady behind the calm. They noticed me at the same moment I smiled, a small, controlled curve of my lips. Instantly, they sat upright, startled, as though the air around them changed in an instant. My daughter's sunglasses slipped down her nose, her husband's mouth hung open, his eyes wide. Their world tilted. Time slowed. My daughter's jaw dropped, her cheeks drained of color. I could almost see the wheels spin behind her eyes, confusion, embarrassment, disbelief. My son-in-law set down his drink so abruptly it rattled against the table. They looked at each other, half speaking through shared shock. I rose gracefully, glass in hand, and stepped toward them. The resort hummed with guests and servers, but all I felt was their gaze, sharp, curious, uneasy. I remained composed, letting the gentle sound of pool water and distant laughter form a backdrop to two hearts that had just noticed I belonged here. Once close enough, I offered my glass in small, deliberate gesture. "Lovely afternoon, isn't it? Can I join you?" My voice was soft as ocean spray, but carried authority. My daughter closed her mouth slowly. She pressed her lips together and nodded slightly. Her husband cleared his throat. Neither moved to offer a chair or say the words, even though they knew it was possible. This was their moment. They had appointed themselves hosts, but I was already the guest of honor. I lowered myself onto a vacant chaise beside them. A server swept in, nodding to me by name as though my presence was expected. Normal? He set a fresh cocktail beside me and winked discreetly at their table, a silent acknowledgement that I belonged here just as much as anyone else. My daughter straightened a bit. I tilted my head, meeting her gaze without accusation, only quiet strength. "I didn't come here to make a scene," I said, voice calm. "I came here for rest, a chance to stand beside you, not behind you, not beneath you." I took a small sip of the drink and let the tropical aromas slide down my throat. I felt anchored in comfort. They looked at each other again. My daughter took off her sunglasses and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Her husband ran a hand through his hair, voice cracking on the quietest apology. "Mom," I raised a hand, smiling. "Please," I said, "let me finish." I gently set the glass back on the side table and relaxed my shoulders. I didn't ask for permission or explanation. I simply reserved the room. I paused to let it settle. The world around us continued, chatter, soft music, other guests drifting by. But for them, everything stopped. My daughter's eyes fluttered with uncertainty. But you flew first class? I took a mock surprised breath. Yes, I chuckled quietly. And the trip was restful, worth every dollar. I let the words sink in. Restful, worth every. You know, looking after dogs and cleaning house is lovely, but so is breathing sea air in peace. Their faces softened, tension morphing into something unfamiliar. Remorse. My daughter reached out, but her husband gently held her arm back. He shook his head once in apology. I looked out at the horizon, waves glittering in the late afternoon sun. I did not need them to say more. They had seen me sit in room comfort, sip cocktails, be welcomed by staff and strangers alike. It was a public affirmation of what private words seldom acknowledged. I deserved dignity. From their stunned faces, I understood their realization. They had underestimated me. A group of guests paused nearby, whispering. I sensed their fascination. They were drawn to the atmosphere, the moment, the unexpected presence of a dignified woman who interrupted the script. I leaned back in the chair, the breeze teasing the hem of my dress. I turned back to my family. Don't worry, I said gently, taking another slow sip. You're still on vacation. Enjoy it. My daughter's eyes flickered with tears, and she blinked them away. Her husband offered a small nod, as though promising they would talk later. I smiled and lifted my glass in a quiet toast. To new perspectives, I said softly. And to peace. They remained still. The sun dropped lower, the pool lights brightened, and the resort began to hum a different tune, a melody of acceptance. Slowly, my daughter reached out. She didn't touch me, but she signaled welcome. Her husband exhaled. A small truce formed in that graceful pause. In that moment, I understood the power of stillness, of presence, of quiet reclamation. I finished the cocktail, set the glass down, and rose once more. I kissed the top of my daughter's head and looked at my son-in-law. I'll see you at dinner, they nodded. I stepped away, the soft click of my sandals on stone echoing calm. I walked back to my suite across from theirs, each step resonant with certainty. I belong. This is my space too. Dinner would come later, but I had already won, not by argument, but by existing on my own terms. Under the wide Maui sky, I was home. The poolside sun had softened into late afternoon when their hesitation finally spread like a slow tide. My daughter and son-in-law lingered close enough to be part of the moment, yet distant enough to signal unease. I sipped my second Mai Tai, watching as curiosity warred with guilt on their faces. Your dogs are well cared for, I began, voice even, calm, careful. My tone carried no triumph, just matter-of-fact clarity. I arranged everything, and I needed a direct opposite of where you thought I belonged. I paused, letting that land. They stared, not speaking. My daughter swallowed, her knuckles whitening as she grasped the arm of her chair. We didn't mean to. It's okay, I told her, softening my voice. But please, if I must correct something, understand this. I am not your housekeeper. I am not your caretaker. I'm not here to be overseen. Their eyes flicked around, catching the gazes of other guests. The server, discreetly observant, passed by with trays but left us space. My presence was unremarkable to him, unremarkable to them, but undeniable. I leaned forward just enough that my voice carried under the rustle of palms. I am your mother. I deserve to be treated as a guest in a place I chose. I examined their posture, stiff, contrite, unsure how to reconcile their guilt with the elegance of my composure. My son-in-law cleared his throat, eyes dropping. You're right, Mom. We weren't thinking. I looked at him kindly. I know life gets busy, but it shouldn't silence respect. My gaze moved to my daughter. History doesn't vanish because the ocean distracts you. She nodded, tears threatening to spill. I'm sorry. It's okay, I echoed. My voice didn't hold judgment, just firm space. Let's not allow this ruin our time together. I lifted my glass. You're on vacation, so am I. I took a deliberate sip. Silence enfolded us. Awkward, true. A family vacation in paradise had become a negotiation of dignity. They looked at me as though they had been shaken awake. confronting a reality they'd ignored for too long. My daughter cleared her throat. "Would you like to join us for dinner tonight? The buffet. It's by the beach." I felt relief. She had to ask, she had to invite, to recognize me. "I would," I said, using language that carried gratitude but no dependence. "Thank you." My son-in-law stood and gestured toward the sunlit lawn. "We'll go pick a table. I'll come get you at 7? I nodded, setting down my Mai Tai. "I'll see you then." As they stood and moved to select seating, hesitant yet earnest, I lingered in my seat. The breeze drifted past, and I breathed slowly. I had not demanded their presence. I had claimed my place. I was both present and independent. Across the pool, resort guests continued their conversations. Some glanced our way, probably intrigued by the aura of reconciliation in progress. I didn't fear their eyes. If anything, I welcomed the witness. They saw that aging did not diminish authority when carried with dignity. A server approached me, offering fresh water and a bowl of pineapple slices. I accepted with a nod. "Mahalo," I said, grateful. This place honored my identity. I closed my eyes, tasting the sweetness. A sense of closure washed through me. This wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about ensuring I was never marginalized again. At 7 p.m. she came for me. My daughter appeared in her resort evening dress, beauty softened by the glow of sunset. She seemed smaller somehow, humbled. She offered her arm. "Shall we?" I stood, smoothing my dress. I placed my hand gently on her arm. "We shall." As we walked side by side, I felt a shift, not just in their behavior, but in the unspoken bond between us. The distance had been reclaimed, and the balance restored. We found a table beneath string lights and palms. They sat on either side of me, positioned as equals rather than usurpers. We watched the waves shimmer, a cosmic mirror to the reconciliation we were beginning to rebuild. No speeches were needed. The evening's menu, the ocean breeze, our easy laughter, all spoke of respect reclaimed. I looked over, seeing a mother and daughter who had learned something, and a husband who recognized his place. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a shadow in their lives. I felt vivid. The night stretched on with stories and gentle jokes, but always tinged with the awareness of boundaries. I was not erased, not diminished. At the end of the evening, my daughter leaned over. "I love you," she whispered. I took her hand across the table. "I love you too." I smiled quietly. It wasn't triumph. It was simple recognition. As we stepped away from the table, I breathed in the tropical night air. The stars above twinkled like reassuring witnesses, and I carried with me the knowledge that standing firm in calm could yield connection, without giving away self. The resort lights dimmed. I had presence. I had peace. I had returned on my terms. I still remember that first evening beneath the resort's open-air canopy, the strings of lights glowing above us while the steady hum of waves filled the air. Guests from around the world drifted in and out of the restaurant, their laughter swirling in soft waves. I was seated alone at my table, but my confidence pulsed quietly in my chest. I belonged. I belonged by right of being visible, present, deserving. Later that evening, I stepped away and wandered toward the water's edge. The sand felt cool beneath my feet, and the surf's gentle rhythm sang a lullaby to my soul. I closed my eyes and reflected on how easily I'd left behind offense and silent disapproval, choosing moonlight instead. The world had shifted, one bold decision at a time, until I was finally free. In the days that followed, I honored myself like the guest I truly was. Every morning before dawn, I walked to the seaside spa. Staff greeted me by name, and each rustle of palm fronds felt like affirmation. I sank onto a heated stone massage table, feeling tension melt, not just physical muscles, but deep within, affirming my worth. Afterward, I attended sunrise yoga on the lawn. The instructor guided us as pink and gold broke across the horizon, each pose rooted in the pulse of the ocean beneath me, each breath restoring self-respect. Around me, travelers of all ages moved in gentle unity. I was no longer invisible. I was part of something larger. Breakfast became my ritual of connection. I sat at a long communal table, sharing croissants and stories with travelers from France, Japan, Australia. A woman from Vancouver told me I radiated calm. A businessman from Seattle said he saw strength in my eyes. It felt unexpectedly wonderful to be admired for simply being present, not useful, that I was real, that I mattered. Some afternoons I strolled along the private beach, collecting shells and painting tiny watercolor postcards. I mailed them, not to my family but to friends who asked how I was healing. I sent one to my daughter with a single handwritten line, "Thank you for giving me space to be me." One evening I attended a resort talk with local artists and authors. I listened to a poet recite verses about resilience. I recognized parts of my own journey in her words. Afterwards, I joined the Q&A and asked how she learned to trust her own voice. She smiled and said, "Start by listening to the sea." I felt affirmed. I had begun listening to the water, to the palm breeze, to my own heartbeat. I noticed my body had changed too. I glowed. My skin looked healthier, cheeks a soft pink. I realized I was sleeping deeply and waking before dawn, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. My feet no longer carried the weight of guilt. I walked with grace, confidence echoing in each step. One afternoon I wore a sundress I had brought from home. Today it felt beautiful, not sensible or hidden. A resort attendant complimented it, calling the color radiant under the sun. She handed me a flower and tucked it behind my ear. I felt seen. Money matters were simple. I had paid for first-class travel, a week in a suite, spa visits, meals, without relying on anyone. That felt liberating. I spoke with a consultant at the spa about a yoga retreat sponsor. I banked flight points for future travel. I felt alive in my financial choices. It mattered. One evening, I drafted a short email to my daughter. "I feel strong here. Thank you for giving me the space to rediscover joy. Enjoy Maui. Love, Mom." I hit send and felt peaceful. No expectation for a reply. This was my grown-up freedom. Not belonging to them, but choosing to belong to myself. On my last night, I attended a beach bonfire hosted by the resort. Music drifted under the stars. People danced barefoot in the sand. I watched couples sway, families laugh, around tables of grilled fish and roasted marshmallows, strangers forging gentle friendships. A staff member handed me a toasted marshmallow. I tasted the sweet caramelization, closed my eyes, and felt memory and healing mingle. I realized I no longer needed an audience to be whole. My presence was enough. As the bonfire crackled, I reflected on the journey. Just days ago, I was told I was expendable. Now, warm lights surrounded me, and my laughter rose among them. Light, free, unapologetic. I had reclaimed something more precious than attention, my dignity, my choices, my peace. Barefoot on the warm sand, I felt whole beneath a sky I once only glimpsed through windows. The ocean did not ask me to be small. The stars did not need me quiet. I belonged, visible, unbroken, loved. I raised my glass to the gold-dipped horizon, champagne catching the last light. Palm fronds swayed, the sea hummed, and I closed my eyes to the breeze, welcoming it like an old friend. For once, I was enough. Behind me, quiet murmurs grew. I turned and saw them, my daughter and son-in-law, just beyond the pool's edge. They hesitated. They watched. I lifted my hands slowly in greeting. Not to forgive, not to invite, just to be. Their eyes followed me as I walked to the water, lifted my glass again, and toasted the dusk. We did not speak. We did not need to. I was already home, and I would never shrink again. My daughter spoke first, voice barely above a whisper. "Mom, I held up my champagne gently. "Enjoy your weekend," I said, my tone even, hopeful but not pleading. "I hope the waves sing for you, like they have for me." I paused, letting the words land. "And remember, so do I." She swallowed and nodded. My son-in-law reached out, thumb brushing over the rim of a cocktail. Neither of them moved to cross the threshold yet. I understood. They needed their moment. I had taken mine. I walked back to my suite's lanai, the golden light dancing across the glass door. The soft click as I closed it behind me sounded like permission given to myself. This is where I stand. My suite, my peace, my choice. Inside, the living area glowed. Candles, a small dish of local fruit, flowers scented with plumeria. I poured another glass, inhaling the sweetness of salt and promise. From my window, I watched them. They lingered at the pool edge for several minutes, quiet and still. Then slowly, side by side, they drifted back toward their own suite, the gap between us still intact, but framed now by respect rather than fear or dismissal. I stood on the terrace, champagne in hand, and whispered to the evening wind. Thought you could leave me in Texas and forget? Look where I am now. Despite the lingering ache from past wounds, my heart pulsed with quiet elation. I was standing tall in paradise, my paradise on my own terms. I had flown across continents, not to steal their spotlight, but to reclaim my own identity. I had stood confidently inside a luxury I had earned through years of love, care, and silent perseverance. No need for dramatic confrontations or tears. I chose calm dignity. That alone made it unforgettable. The palm trees rustled softly, as though applauding. I lifted my glass to myself, to compassion, to self-worth. Night deepened. Lanterns lit the pathway. Stars blinked into existence overhead. I sipped, savoring balance between sweetness and breeze. I felt serene, luminous, free. Later, I stepped into the hallway leading to my suite. I saw their door across from mine. We were neighbors now, 2 suites, different stories. I reached in my pocket and pressed the doorbell of their room once. So they opened the door. My daughter's eyes flickered, his too. We stood there for a heartbeat. No awkwardness, only understanding. I smiled. Good night. Simple. Enough. They said good night, voices small. I walked back into my sanctuary. Ocean sounds drifting through the sliding door. Soft carpet under my feet, lanterns glowing warm. I set the champagne flute on the table and sank onto the chaise, legs stretching toward the sea. I closed my eyes, and the memory of this evening wove into my soul. No need to shout or to apologize. My quiet confidence said it all. Between the golden light and emerald sea, I fell into a deep, full smile. I whispered softly to the night, I deserved this. And with that, I turned off the lights and let the ocean cradle me. If you've ever been left behind, underestimated, or told your place was in someone else's shadow, then you know the silence I walked through before I ever touched the shore of my own life. But here's what I've learned. Dignity is not something they give you. It's something you remember you always had. When they flew off to paradise thinking I'd stay behind and sweep up after their dog, I chose something different. I booked the suite next door. I smiled when they saw me, and I sipped my cocktail with grace, because justice doesn't always shout, it sometimes just lounges by the pool, in linen. So if my story stirred something in you, if you've ever wanted to rewrite your role in a world that took you for granted, then I invite you to stay with me. Subscribe to Grandma True Stories, where the quietest woman in the room finally speaks, and every story is a reminder that wisdom doesn't age, and revenge, well, it just gets wiser.